Mad Marjorie's Mysterious Visitor. The darkening skies above the low-lying marsh island dazzled and sparkled as celestial forces displayed their power. The land grew still and unmoving as all creatures that inhabited the wetlands paid their respect to the great sky. This included one very nervous and diminished figure. The dark cloak that hung loosely around her form tightened as a cool, wet breeze swept past. The unseen form dancing across the water and rustling the tall, thin reeds that dotted the shoreline. Mad Magery sucked in a breath as she reminisced on a childhood long ago, nearly forgotten by time and magic. Her eyes flashed in the moonlight, revealing a pair of golden irises that had long since held a youthful gleam. In the distance, far from the small island and its inhabitants, a red-headed heron shifted from one foot to the other, before sounding a call that rang through the night. The clarion call pierced the veil of silence like a knife cutting through air. Mad Magery cocked her head at the sound. She'd seen this night before. Somewhere, perhaps in a distant dream? Yes, that was it, a dream from her unfettered youth. A dream that had haunted her for many years. Fearing that the dream would soon become a reality, she clenched her jaw and set off at a brisk pace. Her boots slurped and bubbled in the thick, gooey mud as she trudged towards her small cottage in the distance. The heron's call sounded again, for the second time, sending a cold shiver up her spine, feeling much like a wriggling eel. Muttering under her breath, she tried to stall the third and last remaining call she knew was coming. Purple energy gathered like a handful of fine dust in her palm as she raced to recall the spell. She racked her brain, but try as she might, the frail old witch, suffering from years of mental degradation, fell short. She stomped her feet in frustration as she took the first step up onto the landing. Sighing, she resigned and weakly pulled open the door and entered the cozy cottage. The pungent scents of boiled cabbage and minced eel filled the air. A bouquet of wildfire marsh flowers hung in the window, the moon illuminating their soft, delicate petals in a silvery glow. Magery went about her normal work, already have forgotten the reason for her disturbed state. She hummed softly to herself as she placed another log on the hearth and sat in her favorite rocker. Her old bones could use the rest. She smiled fondly as she stared at the thick, leather-bound book containing lifetimes of memories. With shaking hands, she reached down and removed the book from the end table. The dimpled cover seemed out of place on the book. Books weren't supposed to have dimpled covers, nor were they supposed to speak. Yet she had trained the book well, and it hummed softly at her touch. The book let out a yawn, then pleasantly spoke. "Have another vision tonight, Magery?" Magery smiled and stroked the book as if it were a common house cat. "No, not tonight," she croaked. The book bristled, slightly agitated for being woken from such pleasant dreams. Blinking out the last remnants of sleep, the book peered up at the elderly woman, who seemed to think Bertram was a pet. He was not a pet. Not in the traditional sense, anyway. He felt a pang of sorrow well up in his pages as he recalled the many years the two had spent together. There wasn't much company out on the island, not any that Bertram liked to keep. He especially hated the large, smelly black marsh rats. They were fond of sneaking up on him in his sleep and taking small nips at his pages. He, of course, did not like this and would simply snap his cover down on their tails in response. The sorrow deepened as he saw her eyes glaze over, and her persistent stroking faded. She was seen again, but he knew that she would be unable to recall the vision by morning. Bertram was about to wriggle free and make his way back to the end table when he heard the call. He froze. as large, heavy steps sounded just outside the door. Who could that be? He wondered while staying impossibly still. Whoever the stranger was, they were making quite the ruckus as they tripped on the defensive spells and charms set around the cottage. Bertram recalled a particularly hot year when the marshes had gotten too warm and the water level had fallen drastically. On that night, a curious bear had found his way into one of Magery's charm traps. It had taken 3 days to get the bear free from the black, sticky sludge. The creature had departed the marsh with considerably less fur than when it had arrived. The door flew open with a flash of lightning. Long tendrils of steam hissed up and away from the point of impact. The hooded figure stepped into the room, and with him a gust of foul intentions. The dark magic that crackled around the man struck out at the hearth, suffocating the flames until the room was cast into darkness. Bertram found himself unable to move as the stranger advanced, drawing closer to him and Magery. One glance up confirmed that she was still under the influence of a magical vision. "Magery Crockery, great seer of the Eastern Isle, I've been searching for you for some time," the intruder said, and an evil thing it was too. Bertram wanted to yell at the figure and tell him to go away, that he wasn't welcome here. However, as he was about to yell, a dark purple stream of magic wrapped around his cover and bound him tight. The visitor turned his attention to Bertram. "Don't worry, little book of secrets. You will find my company much more enthralling." Then, with a flick of his hand, the magic that held Bertram pulled him away and out the door. Bertram watched with horror as the small shack disappeared behind him. The cottage was the only place he had ever known, and Magery, his only friend. Then he was gone. Magery shook her head and blinked rapidly as she returned to her cottage. She shivered as she wondered why the room was so cold. Then she froze as she met a pair of menacing eyes glaring down at her. Hidden within the dark cloak that concealed the man she feared the most, her memories came flooding back as she recalled the heron's cry. "Get out of my cottage, you demon!" she bellowed, while standing and pulling all the magic she could muster around her. The hooded man cackled and lifted his hands to his hood. The cloak fell away, revealing his face. Smooth and youthful, he would have been handsome if it weren't for his reflective red eyes. "Magery, we both know how this night ends, don't we? You have the knowledge I need. Just tell me where he is, and I'll leave you to die here on your little island. Refuse my offer, and I'll have my magic tear the information from your brain." "I'll never tell you anything," she shouted in response. Magery spread her arms wide and began to chant. Her words grew louder and the clouds in the sky began to swirl. The wind whipped up into a frenzy and caused her pet ducks quite the scare, as, without their permission, they were picked up and tossed through the air. Her voice intensified as she finished the spell. Then, in one fluid moment, she brought her palms together in a thunderous clap. Wild magic, deep and true, exploded outwards until it met a barrier of pure darkness. The visitor laughed through the tempest that now raged around them. Magery's chest heaved, and her golden eyes betrayed the fear she felt inside. "I dare to say your sister was much easier to defeat than you. Soon you will join her," he sneered. Magery began to run, but was lifted into the air like a leaf caught in a breeze. She felt restraints form on her hands and her feet before her body was brought in close to the man. He smiled, revealing 2 rows of glittering black teeth. She closed her eyes and tried to look away as she felt the cold, dead touch of the fingers fall on her head. She felt a sharp pain behind her eyes. Then, nothing. All the years of struggling to remember what she had for breakfast were gone in an instant. Images blossomed in her mind, and for the first time in many, many years, Mad Magery remembered who she was. But most importantly, who she was trying to protect. Her lips lifted into a gentle smile as his curly brown hair and olive green eyes beckoned her to follow him into the lush green forest. Unable to resist, she took his hand in hers and together they ran. The brilliant sunlight flittered down through the canopy above, the shadows twisting about in mesmerizing patterns. Her long copper-colored hair flowed out behind her, and her mirthful golden eyes viewed the world with a sense of awe. They laughed and danced near the creek, their feet barely touching the whispering grass that promised to keep their secrets as their own. Warmth spread through her chest as their lips brushed each other and their eyes locked. His cheeks burned red, and they took a step back. Then the two broke out into deep laughter that filled her soul with joy. Oh, how she missed him. Their years spent together, raising a small family in the mouth of the port. He never aged, not a day, as their children all grew up and left home. She had vowed to protect him, for he was the last of his kind. His magic, the most powerful in the world. "Oh, Arthur," she mumbled as the call of sleep beckoned her away for the last time. She didn't feel the impact as her body hit the ground. The only thing she felt was the warm embrace of her one true love.